What is going on YouTube? Bryce Builds It All, your favorite AMPIA, Part 147 instructor, back with another video. And in this video, I just got done building a motorcycle for the channel. So I figured I would make a video about how airplanes are similar to a lot of other equipment out there in the world. Now, similar and the same are two different words. So this is different systems and different things that you might find on an airplane that are very similar to systems that you will find in tractors, motorcycles, cars, you name it. So stick around. All right, starting off the list, I am going to begin with motorcycle related things. And the first two things I want to talk about is motorcycle clutches and motorcycle forks. So I'll actually start with forks. A motorcycle fork, and I might have to borrow some footage from another YouTuber for this, and that is what it is. But a motorcycle fork is very, very similar to an oleo strut for an aircraft, whether that be a small aircraft or a large aircraft. Now, like I said, similar, not the same. One of the key differences is that inside of a motorcycle fork, you will have a very long spring that actually holds the weight of the motorcycle, and then in that fork, you will have oil or fluid. In an aircraft, in your oleo strut, you will have a fluid chamber and an air chamber. They're not always separated. They're allowed to mingle with one another, but on the top of the strut goes nitrogen, and on the bottom of the strut goes your hydraulic fluid. Now, how they are similar is that both motorcycle forks and aircraft struts will have a metering pin or a metering orifice in that lower chamber. And in a motorcycle, the spring is what carries the weight, and in an oleo strut, the air that's been put into the strut is what carries the weight of the aircraft. But the fluid is what allows the dampening when you hit a bump, or in the case of an aircraft, when you land and that strut gets compressed. So when you land, there's a metering pin in there that slowly but surely closes up the size of the orifice of the strut, so it's allowed to flow relatively freely when the strut begins to collapse, but as it collapses more, it gets slowed down. Well, motorcycles work the same way. They'll have a metering orifice in there for rebound and preload, and it kind of does the same thing, where it controls the flow of fluid through the strut to slow down that compression or that extension of the fork. So there you go. There's your first little interesting part that is similar. Like I said, similar does not mean same. Similar. The next one, continuing right along with motorcycles, is aircraft brake systems and motorcycle clutches. And when I was actually taking landing gear as a student, and we were learning about aircraft braking systems, I was like, that looks a lot like a clutch basket for a motorcycle. Because it kind of is. There are some differences, obviously, many, but if you look at an aircraft brake assembly for a large aircraft, I'm not talking a small airplane here, I'm talking a large airplane like a 737 or something. Your main brake assembly, or your caliper, your caliper is anchored to the axle, so it cannot move. And then your wheel can. And your wheel will have a series of floating friction discs in it, and then your brake assembly will have a series of hydraulic pistons that sort of shove everything together. It's kind of like a stack of waffles, if you will. And after you land, when you push the brakes, that hydraulic force forces all of those friction discs and brake discs to one another to create an immense amount of braking force for the aircraft. Now, this is obviously way simplified down. Well, a motorcycle uses something very similar in the clutch basket. Now, I'm talking about, obviously, bigger motorcycles, not mini bikes. They use a centrifugal clutch. But on a larger motorcycle, you'll have something called a clutch basket. And again, I might have to steal some footage from another YouTuber. I'll try to credit it. But with a clutch basket, you will have your outer basket, you'll have your friction discs, you'll have your stationary discs that are connected to the transmission, you'll have your springs, and you basically have this whole basket built up just like the aircraft in a stack of waffles. The difference is the outside of the clutch basket is driven by the engine, and the inside of the clutch basket is what's driving the transmission for the motorcycle, or the rear wheel if there is no transmission, if it was just one speed. But there's hardly any motorcycles that are just one gear. They're usually at least two or three. But the same thing will happen. Whenever you release the clutch on a motorcycle, you're actually doing the opposite of a brake, which is you're allowing the springs inside that clutch basket to squish everything back together and to rotate and to keep rotating. And when you squeeze the clutch on a motorcycle, what you're actually doing is relieving the pressure on those springs. You're relieving the pressure in the clutch basket, allowing things to spin. Now again, similar, not same. A lot of aircraft, not a lot of aircraft, a lot of motorcycle clutches are what we call a wet clutch, meaning that they are bathed in oil from the engine. So they're constantly wet with oil from the engine. The benefit being that you can really feather that clutch out and you're not going to produce any sort of heat inside the system. And the heat you do dissipate in that clutch is allowed to be dissipated through the oil and then into the oil cooler. With an aircraft, when you put on the brakes really, really, really hard and squeeze all of that down, an immense amount of heat is generated and it doesn't have anywhere to go. And this is why brake fires can happen on an aircraft. When you apply the brakes very hard on a landing, maybe you landed long and fast, I don't know, so you get on a whole bunch of brakes, it can get those brakes really, really, really hot, and then that heat can soak into the wheel. That heat that's soaked into the wheel soaks into the tire begins to expand, and it can explode. So a lot of times they have fusible plugs inside of them, little soldered plugs, if you will, that melt at a certain temperature to allow all that pressure out, and it keeps you from blowing a tire. Finally, moving away from motorcycles for a second, we're going to get into tractors. And that is, the aircraft has a hydraulic system on it, meaning that sometimes if the aircraft has hydraulic flaps, hydraulic ailerons, if it has hydraulic gear, on the smaller aircraft that I work on, it's usually just hydraulic gear. But if it has hydraulic flaps, hydraulic landing gear, there is a hydraulic ram that has to pull that landing gear up and down. Now, wouldn't you know that tractors use hydraulic rams? It's kind of the same thing, similar, but a little bit different. So you have a line on either side of the hydraulic ram. Inside is a piston that moves back and forth. When you extend it, you put fluid on one side and you push that piston out and extend the ram, which in this case would extend or retract the landing gear. I don't know, it depends on how it's designed. And then obviously when you change the fluid flow through the selector valve to go the other way, it pulls that ram back in and will pull your gear up or your flap up, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Well, tractors have the same thing. It's just a large hydraulic ram up on the bucket that allows you to run the bucket up or run the bucket down to do whatever kind of work you're doing. For an honorable mention here, which is actually not so much about maintenance, it's more just about a company and where a lot of our stuff comes from, is aircraft and the seafaring nautical industry. So you may notice that when an aircraft has navigational lights on it, blue and red, or not blue, green and red, you'll notice boats also have green and red lights on them. We have phrases in aviation like the water line. It's the neutral line vertically for the aircraft. You also have the datum, which is 0, and then you have the butt line, which divides the aircraft down the middle in half, left wing and right wing. A lot of those things come from the nautical industry. A lot of our terms and navigational things that we use in aviation come from the nautical industry, or seafaring vessels, sailboats, boats, and whatnot. So a lot of terms are synonymous, and there are a lot of companies, for example Garmin, that are very active in both. If you want to get the best performing, most complete ecosystem navigational equipment for your aircraft, you might consider upgrading to a Garmin panel, using Garmin MFDs and a Garmin radio and a Garmin transponder and a Garmin and a Garmin and a Garmin, and you get the idea. Well, I bet you didn't know, or you may have, Garmin also produces a lot of the similar equipment for boats. They have MFDs and they have navigational equipment. And if you want to buy the best possible equipment to run an autopilot in your boat, you're probably going to buy Garmin. And is it the same? I don't know. I've never worked on a boat's autopilot system or a boat's navigation communication system, but I imagine a lot of it uses the same parts and the same components, and it's made by the same company. Now, the benefit about Garmin being that it's kind of like an Apple product. Once you get inside of Garmin's ecosystem, everything that is Garmin talks to everything else that is Garmin very well. Where you run into problems, yes, it's possible, but where you run into problems is when you have like a Garmin MFD and a Garmin Navcom radio, but a Lynx transponder or an Aviation for some reason, or maybe an Aspen. Then you can kind of run into some struggles getting Garmin to talk to other things. These things are still possible. There's avionics guys that can do it, but when I say the Garmin ecosystem, I mean like the Apple ecosystem. Everything that Garmin puts their name on is designed to work with all of Garmin's equipment. So there you go, everybody. That's going to do it about all for this one. However, I will add this. There is so many more things I could infinitely put on the list. These are just some that I found personally interesting. Magnetos obviously came from somewhere. Magnetos were designed from early engines, and electrical systems obviously came from somewhere. early aircraft electrical systems very strongly resemble that of early automotive electrical systems, and vice versa. And there's a lot of things we've borrowed from one another. For example, anti-skid brakes or anti-lock brakes were designed for aircraft and were eventually adopted to cars. But it was a system that was designed for an airplane, and then cars started using them much later. So, this list, like I said, goes on and on and on and on. And if you are a certificated A&P mechanic or you're an aircraft mechanic, you can probably just about work on anything. A lot of people will ask me that. They'll be like, oh, do you know how to work on cars? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm an aircraft mechanic. I know how to work on everything. I might not be great at it. I'm not a master mechanic, but I can usually figure it out. So thank you all so much for watching. Just a reminder to get yourself some form of a Bryce Builds It All t-shirt, a sticker, a poster, I don't know. Go to the store, get yourself something. Make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, subscribe. If you found something similar from your career or something that you found you've worked on in the past that strongly mirrors an aircraft, drop it below in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, all of that good stuff. And as always, go build something and be easy.